Nope.
Number 1. This happened to me while I was on spring break vacation at my family's condo in Clearwater, Florida, while I was in 7th grade. It scared me quite a bit and made me much more careful of who I became friends with on the internet. I had a long-distance friend over Facebook by the name of Lucas V. We had been friends for several months, and I learned that he was the same age as me. Eventually, I gave him my phone number and we started talking even more than before. One day, while I was sitting around at our condo, Lucas texts me, knowing I'm in Florida, and claims he's headed to the same mall at the same time that my family and I are going. He also said that him and his little sister were walking there, and that he was, quote, carrying her on his back. I thought it was sort of odd that a 13-year-old and his baby sister would be allowed to walk to a mall on a busy highway street. I later shrugged it off as we headed to the mall. After a bit of shopping, I texted Lucas to ask him where he was. He said that he was standing outside of PacSun, and supposedly he sent me a picture to prove it. But I never got it. With my parents now fed up of waiting for this kid to show up, I call him. I will always remember what I heard on the other end.
Hey kid, where are you? I'm getting pretty pissed off.
It was an older man's voice, in a very angry and menacing tone. I quickly hung up and raced towards the mall entrance where my parents were and told them what happened. They texted his number, threatening to call the police. All he said was,
Screw this. I'm walking home. Go ahead and call them.
Since then, I've been very wary of who I meet online and make sure I don't tell anyone I don't know personally where I'm going on vacation. I don't want to get followed again. Number 2. Alright, I'm in a rush and I'll try to keep this short. Just some background information. This is not my story, but a friend of mine. He told us about it when we all met up at our hotel. It happened a couple weeks ago while driving down to Florida for spring break. Some fraternity brothers and I were embarking on what most college-aged kids do, go down to Florida for spring break. Since we had a rather large group, we had to take multiple cars. I think there were 5 in total. Anyway, the original plan was to drive down with walkie-talkies in a sort of caravan so we can stick together and arrive on time. As it usually goes with college kids, the plan fell through and we all left our frat house at various hours. Now, on to the story. My friend, we'll call him Jay, was driving in his friend's pickup truck with him and 4 of my fraternity brothers. Since they decided to drive a pickup for 14 plus hours, they had to stop for gas a lot. So, towards the end of the journey, and in the wee hours in the morning, they stopped at some super sketchy back roads gas station in Alabama. It was my friend Jay's turn to fill up the tank since everyone was taking turns filling up. While the rest of the guys were in the gas station going to the bathroom and buying snacks, it was just Jay standing outside of this super sketchy gas station at about 4 a.m. And that's when things started to get weird. As Jay was pumping gas, he noticed some super creepy redneck looking guy stumble right out of the shadows. This already raised some red flags because they were literally in the middle of nowhere with no houses or other buildings around. As Jay is watching this guy, he comes up to him and in a very creepy way asks, "Hey man, you want to make $20? Since it was quite early in the morning, and Jay had no idea who this dude was, he didn't really process what was going on. So the creepy dude pressed on. "You want to make $20? He asked again. Jay, already aware that this dude was either on something or up to something, became very cautious. The man then asked, "What's the matter?" According to Jay, the dude claimed that his car broke down a couple miles down the road. The direction in which he was pointing happened to have no streetlights or any kind of light. He continued to explain his situation to Jay, saying that he needed a lift back to his car. Jay was kind of weirded out and declined the offer. The guy kept pressing on, saying that his wife and 16-year-old daughter are in the car, as if trying to incentivize Jay, and that he would make it, quote, worth his time. Jay started to get really creeped out at this point and once again declined. At this point, my other friends returned from outside the gas station, and immediately the guy disappeared back into the shadows that surrounded the area. Needless to say, after Jay told the rest of the group what happened, they hauled ass the rest of the way to Florida. Now, you may think that this guy was in actual need of help, but what made it so strange was the fact that he literally came out of nowhere at 4 a.m. in the backwoods of Alabama. And if his car really had broken down and he managed to make it to a gas station, what was stopping him from just asking the attendant for help? At first, when Jay told us all the story, we just figured that the guy was some meth head who was looking for some alone time with him. We all laughed it off as just some weirdo. We didn't let it mess up the vacation, but it's definitely a strange story. Number 3. I feel like my life might be a span of creepiness, but here is something that happened to my mother and me a few years ago when I was visiting from college. It was spring break and I flew down to South Florida to see my mom. One night, I had come home a bit early from hanging out with friends, around midnight. It was raining rather heavily and the power had started to flicker on and off, so I decided it would be best if I just went to bed since I couldn't watch TV or go online. My mom also decided to go to bed as well, but she is an insomniac, and while trying to fall asleep, she heard noises coming from our backyard. She looked through the blinds but could only see darkness. She went into my room and woke me up. She then told me that there was something going on in our backyard. Our backyard was fenced off with a screened patio, which is locked with a screen door. We both went to a window and looked through the blinds. That's when I saw some very faint shadows. It was really dark though, so I decided to flick on the lights to our backyard. As I flipped the switch on and off, I realized the power was totally gone, and that meant our alarm system was also disabled. I pressed my ear against the glass while still hiding behind the blinds with my mom. I heard a clinking sound, the type of clinking sound you would hear if you rattled an empty aluminum can and the Coke tab had fallen in. I thought I heard voices, but I couldn't be sure because of the rain. After sitting at the window for a few minutes with my mom, I decided that maybe it was just our imaginations although neither of us wanted to go outside and check it out for sure. "There's probably no one outside," I said to my mom. I could see that she was really worried. Her and I are both very petite women. We both went to our respective rooms, and a few minutes later, I heard a loud bang. The sound was so loud, it echoed through the house. Without thinking, I immediately jumped out of bed and ran toward the window that overlooks our backyard. I ran so fast that I slipped onto the tiled floor as I came up to the window. I pushed the blinds away, only to see a faint crack in the window that was spreading quickly throughout the glass. I realized immediately that the glass was cracking and it was probably going to shatter any second. At this point, my mom was at the window with 2 hurricane flashlights. We shined them through the cracked but still intact glass, only to see the patio door swinging wildly outside, but no one was there. After the storm subsided, we called the cops. We all went to the patio door to inspect it, and sure enough, the lock had been tampered with. The cops said it looked like there were several people out there by the look of the grass and the bushes. As for the glass, the cops said it didn't look like someone hit it with anything because the glass was cracked in a million pieces, but didn't shatter. There was also no sign of an impact. After the cops left, my mom and I reasoned that the loud bang could have been the glass snapping because of the pressure change from the storm, and perhaps that sound freaked out whoever was trying to break in. Very surreal. Number 4. Back in 1991, I went to Daytona Beach for spring break with 4 other guys. We stayed in a ratty, cheap motel along the ocean front. While we were at the beach, we made plans to go out to dinner on the second night and check out one of the cool-looking nightclubs along the main strand. Things didn't go as planned though. 3 of my roommates had to go to a medical clinic because they were so badly sunburned and dehydrated from drinking all day. They had to get a shot, and that shot made them sleep the rest of the day back at the motel room. So, the other one roommate that was okay, named Kurt, and myself decided we would still go out that night. We walked about a mile or 2 to where all the bigger attractions were. We stood in line at one of the fancier looking nightclubs for quite some time and then decided it wasn't worth the wait. So we went to a regular looking nightclub instead. This place was just okay and we had a few drinks. About 30 minutes later, Kurt started to feel a bit queasy and tired and said he's planning to go back to the motel. I tell him that I'm going to hang back there at the club for a little while longer, especially since the place had a $20 cover fee to get in. Being the broke college kid that I was, I didn't feel it was justified to be leaving so soon. So I stayed there a few hours longer, had a few drinks, and started to get annoyed at how overly crowded the place was starting to get. I decided it was now time to leave. As I was walking along the main strand back to our motel, I noticed it was actually fairly quiet, and then I saw what appeared to be a group of Hispanic-looking guys ahead take notice of me, and they quickly hid in some bushes along the walkway. They were right in the path that I would be crossing. My mind and my heart started racing. There was no one else around me, and I assumed they were planning to jump me or rob and attack me. People just don't crouch into bushes for no reason. I had no idea if they had weapons too. I was quickly assessing my options, and I was too afraid I wouldn't make it past them if I ran. I stopped a moment to figure out what was around me and saw an expensive-looking hotel just across the road. I noticed in my hesitation that one of them began to make his way closer to where I was standing. I bolted across the main drag of road as fast as I could, not looking back, and into the lobby of this hotel along the beach. I tried to gain my composure when I got inside, as not to draw attention to myself. I did not see any of the guys enter, so I figured they were still outside. There were a lot of people in the hotel, as it had a nightclub/bar, and the place was getting pretty crazy. I made myself blend in with some other guys there and hung out for a short while. Now, in the back of my mind, I was still too terrified to make the trek back to our motel, just in case these guys had followed me. I did not want to go back to that main drag alone. So I noticed the bar extended out to the beach. I walked down to the beach, jumped the hotel gate, which was fairly low, and followed the moonlight back to our ratty motel. I made sure not to go anywhere without the rest of the guys after that. Number 5. Let me start out with a bit of background information. At the time this occurred, I was in nursing school and struggling to get by. My dad killed himself when I was young, and my mom turned to alcohol after that. So I didn't get much help there, but I was determined to get my degree and have a stable life for myself. I lived in a crappy ghetto apartment in the scary part of town. I'm talking gunshots at least once a week, needles on the sidewalk, trash, etc. The random hours required for clinicals make it hard to hold down a good job. Plus, I didn't have any transportation besides my bike, which was on its last leg. Long story short, I was having a very hard time and was looking for any way to make some extra money. Cue Jane. She was a good friend of mine whom I had known since freshman year. She noticed my situation and told me that she was making $200 plus a night at a local strip club. This got my attention, as that was a lot of money to me. She said the club had a no-touching policy, and the guys literally threw money at you. I made the decision to go with her that night and just check it out. I was graduating in less than a year anyway, so why not? Jane stayed by my side the entire night. I felt safe. No one touched me, no one harassed me, and I made over $300. I was ecstatic. The best part was I chose my own hours so I could make sure that work didn't interfere with school. We went a few more times together before she left to visit her family for spring break. She left me with explicit instructions that if I decided to go to work, I was to take a cab. I actually had the money for that now. Call her when I left for work, call her when I got there, text her every hour, and call her when I was leaving. This seemed overkill to me, but I agreed. I finished all my classwork early one night and thought since it was spring break in a big city, I could probably earn a few hundred extra dollars. I called a cab, called Jane, and went to work. Everything was normal. I was doing a great job and making more than I ever had. Then I was approached by a girl who I had seen there before. She introduced herself as Asia, but none of us went by our real names. She talked to me for a bit and asked where I lived. This sent off tiny alarms, but I figured she was just being friendly, and I named off a different shitty apartment complex near mine. She told me that she was looking for a chill roommate and asked if I would be interested. I was obviously taken aback, but at the same time, I was dying to get out of my own scary place. I asked how much rent was, and she said the guy who owned the duplex wasn't charging students as long as they were working. This alone should have sent off more alarms since I didn't tell Asia I was a student, but I completely missed that at the time. I was a little cautious, but definitely interested. She told me that she could take me to check out the place after the club closed, and then take me home afterwards. I thought there was no harm in looking. I called Jane and told her about the situation. She became very quiet and asked what the girl's name was. I told her, and she responded saying I needed to call a cab and get back home now. I was pissed that she was ruining this for me until she explained that Asia was a well-known prostitute. Long story short, yeah, I would have gotten to live there, but as a sex slave. She didn't want me as a roommate. She wanted to bring me back to her pimp. I called a cab and hid in the back until it got there. I heard Asia looking for me, but I didn't come out. As soon as I got the text that the cab was there, I ran out the back door and sprinted to it. I looked back and saw that the commotion I had made caused Asia, who was still looking for me, and a large man that she was with to turn in my direction. I never worked there again and graduated a few months later. I now live in a good apartment with a great job at the ER, but I shudder to think what could have happened if I didn't call my friend that night. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, be sure to leave a like down below, and if you really liked it, be sure to subscribe for future stories. Be on the lookout for a special announcement video coming later this week. I'll be introducing a brand new second channel that you just may be interested in. Until then, remember to stay safe out there, and I'll be seeing you
In the next video.
Spring break, bitches!